such must be fascistic, and that is in a very short explanation.
When you say that it's the state is behind this genocide, what is the interest of President Abiy to kill the people of his own country, especially Amharic people? So for an outsider, the Ethiopian conflict, I think, gets more and more difficult to understand. We hear a lot about Tigray, we hear a lot about Oromo, we know the Amharic people is there, but it seems to be also interconnected. And can you explain to us what is the interest of the state to destroy the Amharic, why they're officially going against the Tigray Liberation Front?
I think we have been also asking this question because it was not that much clear for most of us what's happening really. What does it mean? Because we have been asked several times by media, and the question comes exactly, okay, you say it is genocide, what is the state doing? And we had not a very good answer for that. So, I mean, as I said, genocide and the fascists, there are 4 characters, and they are doing it. It is about violence, and it is about territorial expansion. It is about persecution. It is about genocide. All the 4 main factors are existing in Ethiopia, and these have been done with the leadership of Abiy Ahmed.
And just to have this a bit more clear, if I understand you well, are you saying who is committing those crimes? Who is committing these killings? Is it really government troops, or is it other troops, armed troops, whoever, who are backed by the government? To have it a bit more clear for us who are not so familiar with what's going on.
We call it the state-sponsored genocide. The paramilitary militias and so on, they are controlled by Abiy Ahmed, and that has been clearly noticed. And one cannot this genocide separate from the state. If the state was not fascistic, if the state was really wanted to really save the people, they could have done it. They don't even mention when 3,000 people, 3,000 Amharas have been killed. So there are so many indications that the military and the paramilitary, and particularly the regional forces in the Oromo region, they are the ones who are preparing the way so that the paramilitary, the OLF, comes and kills them. And Abiy Ahmed, he doesn't do anything because he's in command of that. That is very logical. If you are a state, if you are a prime minister, you are the one who commands all these things.
I don't know if you want to add anything to that, otherwise we continue our first round with the next speaker, and then we go more into details. And I would like to turn to Meaza Mohammed. You are in Addis, I presume, at the moment? Yes. Welcome, that we can have you here, at least virtually. So I'm very happy. You are a journalist and human rights activist. You're founder of a media channel. And before we start with your presentation, one very personal thing I would like to mention about you, that you were affected yourself. You were arrested, if I'm mistaken, in December, I think, last year, November or December. And would you like to share just very briefly with us what happened and what you were accused of?
Yeah, thank you so much. As you see, I were working in media and was trying to advocate some sort of human rights violations and something, to advocate for human rights issues. So, whatever the case, as you see, in December I was arrested by the Ethiopian government. That was the first time after the change has come, and also before 1 month, before 1 month I was arrested again for the second time. The reason behind it was that the ongoing was really escalated, and different issues were raised from different areas, and the government was trying to control every activities, every news, and every issues. So the thing that we've been doing now, not comfortable for them. I was trying to tell the truth for the people, what was the purpose of the war, what's happening, especially on the Amhara people, especially living in around North Walo and also Gondar. So I was trying to tell the truth. I was trying to show the human rights violations. Many people were displaced from their homes. Many people were in different islands, different areas. I can also leave. We have time the second round. So many women and children were raped by different group of people, especially from the Ethiopian soldiers. To not discord people, that was not the president. For 40 days in prison, and the time works to stop acting against the government, and so those medias, those journalists who've been trying to give coverage for this, we were arrested. Not only me, it was 19 journalists were arrested, activists were arrested, and their family groups, families, those people were helping the government during the war with the TPLF. Those were also arrested and in mass arrest, in mass arrest. Even the government itself already announced it, more than 5,000 families was arrested by the government, and but the fact was more than 8,000 were arrested by the government. Even they were killed in front of their parents, in front of their children. They were killed, so we were arrested for more than a month, and still there are journalists arrested. We were released, but like journalists like Stevens Island, Times Kantu, and other political leaders also are still in the arrest.
Just one short question. Obviously, you're released now. Are you still facing any threats, or is it now will you continue? You can continue your work, or how is it?
Well, I can continue my work, but that does not mean I'm not under threat. But even before I was arrested, I was under threat. I knew that there will be such kind of consequences from the government. From its character and from what they have been doing and telling press, I can know that any day they can arrest me again. But I will stop because just in Ethiopia, let me tell you one thing, in Ethiopia, arresting is a kind of measure, by the way, for us. Because people are dying in every single day with no reason, with no issue. People are dying in every single day with a lot of numbers. So arresting cannot be a threat for us.
So, from what I understand, you would totally agree with what Tamara said, that you would also say that it's fascism and it's a genocide, or how would you describe what's going on, and how do you describe it in your reports?
the Amhara people are currently, trapped between genocide and war aggression. I can conclude it like that. There is a genocide, and the other hand, there is a war aggression. The people who are living from the so-called the Amhara regional states are in continuous war. It's called the North War actually, but the war is between the TPLF and the Amhara people. Again, actually it continues about the genocide. We call it genocide, which is what from its very genocide is when people are killed just because of their identity or because who they are, or not only in Oromia regional state but also in Benishangul regional state, just because the mission, the target of this killing just cleansing the Amhara people from that specific area. They have a historical background, they have a historical rhetoric in order to kill and to clean those people. They gave two options. The first option, leave off police. You're a minority, you not belong to this area. So if you're not living, you have donated a lot of $1 million for the Great Famine in Ethiopia. I think all of you may remember this. Those people who have been saved by the world from that Great Famine are the people who are under the threat of genocide. They moved due to that Great Famine. They moved to different areas like Welega and also some other places like in Benishangul. Those people are called as settlers, and they consider them the minority. So what they are trying to do is just clean them from that area. This has its own background, historical rhetoric. They have a historical rhetoric that those people are who came from different areas, and then they feel that they are not belong to that area. Especially you can see that they doesn't take any kind of prevention and doesn't take any kind of legal issue. I mean, legal charges. So they didn't bring the killers, those who were doing this genocide, those who were doing this ethnic cleansing to the court. They have never done that. And even we have the recent explanation of the recent report from Human Rights Watch, if you saw it, it says the people are calling for help before 2 or 3 days. People who were killed, they killed 1,500 people in a single day within 8 hours, only 8 hours. Before that, they have been calling the government, they have been calling for different medias and for different people who can do all, who they think they can do something for them. But they didn't, the government didn't protect them. What has been done is the government came after all things happened, after all people were killed, and when the killers leave the area, the government cannot do that point. So we've been saying, even they didn't condemn this, even they didn't give a single word, a single explanation about what's happening in Welega, about what's happening in Benishangul, about what's happening in Sameshwa, while the same people with the same rhetoric, with the same situation. So what I have to say is it is a state-sponsored genocide. If not, let's see what the government is doing to protect it or to do something even after it happens. They are not calling the international people, they are not doing anything. So how can we say that the government doesn't know this? How can we say that there is no demand of the government on these all issues?
Okay, meaza, thank you for this really strong statement. I think we would for the first round, leave it like that, what you said. And I would like to turn further a little bit back from this first round from Addis here to Frankfurt. And on my right-hand side, I would like to say, David, nice to have you here. You are from the Stop Amhara Genocide Group, and this is an association that started in Switzerland. You're also a member of a media group in Ethiopia. You're currently based in The Hague. And you joined us here on the spot, which is really good. So it's nice. Now we heard already a lot about genocide, and also Tamara already addressed it about fascism. You also wanted to talk about ethno-fascist structures that you think are for the moment are determining Ethiopia. These are all strong words, as I said before, and also to you, the question would be how you would come to that conclusion and to these severe accusations. Do you have some concrete examples? Meaza was talking about some massacres, some concrete things. So maybe you could share with us why you come to that conclusion as well.
Okay, thank you. First thing, the media is based in the US, not in Ethiopia, but that's fine.
Sorry.
And so that everybody knows that, it's clear for the audience. Secondly, the topic I have is that ethno-fascist state structure in Ethiopia, and it will focus a little bit on what I think Ukraine as a case for this topic to highlight really in a manner that it can really give us an example. Yes. So in a sense, the Ethiopian states are within Ethiopia. We have regional states based on ethnicity. So we can call them ethnic federalist regions which have come to exist, especially the major ethnic groups in Ethiopia, such as the Amhara and Oromos and the others in Ethiopia. So everybody has a homeland, let's say, a homeland which says, okay, even these regions have also their own constitution, and depending on regional governments, so they have given rights or denied rights for the inhabitants of that certain region, and that has never come to existence. These regions never came to existence democratically. That's imposed, and it has never considered the demography, the ethno-linguistic demography, and I think it's also done, and certainly it's done to disadvantage Amhara's mainly. And this is a fascist vote to disadvantage a certain group in Ethiopia with a perception and also a rhetoric to say that the Amharas have been privileged and are dominant, so we have to now disadvantage them and we have to crush them. And those are the words that are actually have been uttered by big leaders of, for example, TPLF. And these are the rhetorics of every liberation force in Ethiopia.
So now we talked a lot about the ongoing war, which started more or less in November last year, 2020, so already 2 years ago. So now we're back into war, and we hear a lot about Tigray, and that the government is fighting the Tigray Liberation People's Front. Now you say that those crimes against the Amharic people are committed by the Tigray People's Liberation Front and other armed bodies, and is backed up by the government. How does that go together? That's very difficult to understand for outsiders.
So yeah, what happened is that after Abiy Ahmed came to power by outcasting the TPLF, gradually using the bureaucracy of Ethiopia, they have pushed out TPLF from the coalition, which was the Ethiopian Democratic Front, ETRDF, and ETRDF was mainly led by TPLF, very dominantly, and that has controlled the state, the economy, and also the politics and the military as well. So after that's the economics question and also some freedom questions, and then after TPLF was kicked out of the coalition, they were allies actually, they were previous allies, and now the Oromos are the dominant group, and then the splinter from DPRDF is now the Prosperity Party, which Abiy Ahmed himself came up with, and then imposed it, and then it says, oh, all the regions have now prosperity. So we have an Amhara Prosperity Party, we have a Oromo Prosperity Party, and not so successful for the Tigrayans, because now that's the power struggle that we have now, and that's when this power struggle led to war, and that war has been started. Actually, I'm not on Facebook, and then what happened is that the Abiy Ahmed hasn't fought the war decisively and then infiltrated, and then made the war actually come to the Amhara region. So now the Amhara region is the battlefield, and also Afar.
And from what I understand, and you also told me before, when we prepared the talk a little bit, you said that it's also very significant that the attacks against the Amhara citizens has already started before the war we're talking about, and also outside the actual war.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Yeah, so we have had the Amhara region, I mean, that's the home base basically, but Amharas live actually all over Ethiopia, especially in Addis. Majority of the population of Addis are Amharas, even though the governments, successive governments want to deny that and to suppress that census. Elsewhere also, like regions like Oromia, Amharas are a big number, millions and millions. And the Benishangul region, which has come to existence by taking historical Amhara lands and then crafted another region which outcasted totally the Amhara population of the region, made some minorities the owner of that region. So all these Amharas elsewhere, their own home-based states are vulnerable and not represented politically. They are not allowed to have their own, and they actually also, beyond that, they are also made defenseless by they strip their self-protecting rifles that they used to have because they are farmers, and everything, every piece of the existence of a person is actually taken. So if your life is only on the mercy of someone and not protected by any law or any governmental structure, or So that's why there were already killings, mass killings and genocide killings happening in the Benishangul region continuously, and the same in Oromia region, different cities, not only now in Welaga, it's a lot frequent these days, but it has been happening also elsewhere. Different cities have been burned totally, and especially targeted Amharas by name. They have even a list of people, and ground killings and burning and destruction of businesses, and immediately sometimes also actually annexation of their properties. That has been happening, so we have been advocating for that already before the war started, using the Amhara genocide hashtag or Stop Amhara genocide hashtag, and then now we know that it's also backed by the state, so we are now saying it's state-sponsored Amhara genocide that's ongoing in Ethiopia.
So you also have this accusation. Of course, I would like to bring in one of our online participants, one Magen Ejidu. I probably didn't pronounce it. And we're happy to have you here. If I'm not mistaken, you are joining us from Sweden, I think.
Yeah, from Sweden.
Yeah, very nice to have you here. You present the Badra support group. You are representative of the Badra support group, and the Badra's party is one of the opposition parties. And you yourself, you're also known for your critical blogs that you were already writing, I think also already before the war. Now we talked already about what's going on in some regions. We have some concrete cases. We saw the pictures, and of course those pictures showing us very vulnerable people, farmers in remote areas and villages. And this is also, I think, a perception of the international community has that is going on in remote areas. But you say that Addis is or will be or could be the next site of genocide. Could you explain to us why you think that's and how it's going to happen? It's horrible to hear.
Thank you, Monica. And can you hear me?
Yes, very loudly.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to thank Frankfurt Press Club for preparing this platform to discuss about the ongoing genocide against Amara people. My topic focuses on Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, and I can represent there is a big concern that Addis Ababa will be the next stage for the ongoing genocide in Ethiopia, and there is a reason for that. The other participants have explained about the nature of the state, the government, how it is ethno-fascist. Then the thing is that if we look at the political concept that ethno-nationalism is basically means like every structure, every function of the government is basically lies on ethnical lines. Then fascism is basically means it's an absolute dictatorship where the people, the citizens of that state have no say. So if we combine these two simple political concepts, then we have ethno-fascist region in Ethiopia. And a city like Addis Ababa, which is a metropolitan city. Addis is it's a big city. It's a melting pot. That means if you take Frankfurt, New York, for example, we have different people residing in a city from different corners of the world with different ethnic background, but the city itself, through the urbanization process, is a melting pot, and it creates its own identity, like Frankfurt. Or if someone from New York, let's say I'm from New York, so that gives Addis Ababa its own identity by itself.
But wouldn't that sorry to interrupt you, but wouldn't that mean that a genocide is less likely? Because if you have such an international identity, normally people have less prejudices against each other and less hatred because they're more familiar with living side to side. So
exactly. I share your point. But the current region, what they're trying to do is changing and define the concept of urbanization by itself. So they are trying to create Addis as a homogeneous society. They have clearly stated, even in public media, that Addis belongs to Oromos and belongs to owned by the Oromia region. So after the current region took its power, they have tried to distribute illegal Addis Ababa identification cards for the Oromo people. They have tried to change the demography of Addis Ababa through resettling people from Oromia region. And they have these illegal political claims. So in the beginning it was like Oromia region should have a special benefit from Addis Ababa because where Addis is located geographically. But now it is clear that the Abiy region, the Prosperity Party, and those who are on the opposition side from the Oromia politicians, they claim that Addis belongs to Oromos and Oromia region. They are clear with that. Then there is massive land grabbing in Addis Ababa. There is illegal distribution of state-owned condominiums and apartments, and they are allocated to Oromos through different leaders. So these are I should say illegal undemocratic political strategies whereby they want to defy this urbanization process and make Addis Ababa a homogeneous society only for Oromos. But it doesn't end here. Maybe I can discuss it in detail in the second round. But recently, the government, the Oromia region president, which is his name is Shimalis Abdisa, and the mayor of Addis Ababa, her name is Adana Chadabe, that comes from the Oromo Prosperity Party. They had a meeting and they decided like the demarcation, the geographical demarcation between Addis Ababa and Oromia regional states. So over that meeting they have decided and they have taken a huge part of Addis Ababa to the Oromia region. So this is like the first step, precedent. It means like now a huge part of Addis Ababa is already belongs to Oromia region, and this will give them the platform actually to commit the genocide against Addis Ababians. So they are defining the natural process of urbanization, and they are trying to change the metropolitan nature of Addis as a city and making it as a homogeneous society.
Yeah, thank you for this insight. We will indeed come back later also. That also goes back to the question, what is the overall interest behind all this? I think we should also discuss that in our second round. But first, I would like to also say hello to Dr. Fitsam Ashamele. I'm sorry, it's not so easy. You're from the group Genocide Prevention Ethiopia. You are based in the US by profession. You're a lawyer, and actually you're joining us from France right now. And and you say that well, it goes into the same direction that the other panelists already said. You also say that the Amharas are becoming stateless in their own country. So it means that you would also say it goes much, what Lily already said, what's the problem of the Amharic people goes much beyond the actual war that we hear about. Because we're in the West, we only hear about Tigray and what's going on there. But you say that the Amharas are going to be stateless in their own country. So the question is also to you, how is that happening? What do you think is the full political interest behind that?
Well, thank you. So my organization was established 2 years ago formally, but we've been working on this issue, more than 2 years now. The root cause of the current Ethiopian problem is the Ethiopian constitution, or the system that was set up in 1991. So the framers of the current constitution, the constitutional system, where they came together to somehow either wipe out or dwindle or destroy the Amharas or their political power. So it all started in 1991, and then they framed the constitution in 1994 and divided this country into ethnic, quote-unquote, ethnic federal. So they set up regional states that intentionally not only defranchise, but also get license for any kinds of genocidal activities. The kind of thing that you have seen or read back in the 1940s. If you remember the genocide in Germany or other states had a disadvantage. The Weimar Constitution of the 1920s and the 1935-38 wars in the Eastern Europe that gave license for rulers to not only dehumanize but also to make Jews stateless. So that's where the whole thing starts. So the killing the other forms of genocidal acts did not start 2 years ago. It's been going. It's like a continuing flow of activities for the last 10 years. Now it has been intensified and get the attention of the outside world. We're trying to get the attention, but in the past 30 years this has been going on. So the whole thing is, I have heard you've been asking other panelists, what is the interest of Abiy? But Abiy came from this system. The interest of Abiy, as any political leader, is to stay in power. Today, he can stay in power by doing this thing, by change. Hitler and other people stayed in power for a limited period of time because they could do it. They had the support, or either active support or support based on fear. So Abiy could stay in power as far as he's doing this. Whenever he could not, whenever the people revolt and act against him or his interests, even from his own ethnic groups, then either he would leave power or leave or stop being. So, but today, each constitution, the Ethiopian constitution and other constitution of the regional states, like Article 2 of the Benishangul state, and the preamble and Article 8 of the Oromia state give license to such acts. So, and people ask, oh, why not the government is helping these people? Because they could not. The system is done not to help. The system is done for them either to leave the area and move back whatever this Bantustan state that they set up, or they be here. And especially in the past few years, what the Oromia region and the Benishangul region has done is similar what has went on in this area in Europe back in between 1939 to or even 38 to 45. So what they couldn't do with Amhara's, Oromia, and Benishangul region is to make Auschwitz or Birkenau type camps where they can burn them or make a soap of them because they don't have the technology. But all the other things, confiscation of properties, killing, denying of burial places, destroying burial places, and churches or mosques, and all of the genocidal acts have been committed. Now, so this is being committed now. And this is done because their constitution, so the Oromia constitution, the Benishangul constitution, and other constitution, like the preamble of the Harare constitution, allows such acts. Now, you might say, well, is this allowed by the Ethiopian constitution? I don't know. I'm not sure it's not allowed. I'm not sure it's not allowed. But the Abiy government knows, and other regional leaders know that their act, their constitution, and their acts are at least incompatible or against the constitution of the Ethiopian constitution, 1994. But there's many constitutional court, like in modern day Europe, that can interpret this constitutional act, saying that, hey, what this governor does, or what this constitution is against the constitution of the Ethiopian government, of the Ethiopian state. So, in short, the Amharas are stateless because of the constitutional system that gave rise, or that gave rise to other state constitution, which is the fruit of the poisonous tree, And because of this governance, police officers, regional leaders or regional, appointees believe that hey, I'm licensed to do this, and I'm not going to help you. So the whole system is set up to defranchise and destroy the whole Ethiopia, in that the Amhara people. By the way,
so the fragmentation the goal is to fragmentize Ethiopia.
Exactly. The goal is to balkanize Ethiopia, not to build Ethiopia or transfer Ethiopia to another, democratic state. But the constitution is set up as if like we usually do this for people who are getting married of interest, or people who are like writing separation agreements. When either elderly people or young people get married, say, okay, can you prepare me a separation agreement so that if this marriage doesn't work, then I can take my own property, and then you go, take your own, and I take my own. So this constitution was set up to balkanize Ethiopia, to defragment Ethiopia, not to end with the intention, as I said, with the intention of not giving voice to Amhara people, because they, in 1991, the winning forces, TPLF and others, so that the Amhara, which call them Nephtalians as an epithet, are enemies. And their constitution, the Ethiopian constitution, if you go back and read how they frame the constitution, how they debate the constitutional debate, you can see that, hey, we have this system for how many hundreds of years, and the Amharas were the perpetrators, and we're going to destroy that. So this is the root cause. This is the root cause, and it will not be solved. The Ethiopian problem, the human rights problem, could not be solved without changing this constitution. Thank you.
Thank you for this insight. So before we continue to discuss Mohammed, I would like to know whether here in the room somebody has some questions that we would like to directly address. Do you have any questions to the panelists? Maybe not for the moment. I'm looking towards our technician. Can people who are watching us on YouTube, can they also ask questions? Or
can any of the panelists explain the relation between Abiy and the Oromo State region, and he as Oromo, what kind of role is playing in all things? I think someone explained it, but it's not that much in detail, I suppose.
Okay, so the question is, why is Abiy, he as a Oromo, has particular interest and role in that? I think it always goes back to the question, always insisting, what is the interest? Because again, it doesn't make, from the first view, at first glance, let's say, it doesn't make much sense to an outsider. Somebody is destroying his own country, more or less.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, yes, but it is not a normal circumstance. We have to deal with genocide and fascism. I come again to that point because...
Maybe also to ask the question, not to explain in particular what is the situation of Abiy as a Oromo, what's to clarify.
It doesn't play any role. He has this goal, and the primary goal is really to expand, to persecute, and to have a genocide, and they have their own levels up, so to say. And that is it. And the constitution as such, that is not the goal. It is a means to just accelerate the genocide, because the constitution says, for example, the Oromo constitution says, Amhara said, not Oromos are not at home. They don't have any right to vote, any right to be elected. So it has, it has a reason behind it. It is, just driving away the Amharas, and particularly the Amhara, because we should not forget 15 to 20 million Amharas are living in the Oromo region without any right. So that means it is in a second thought what I see that Abiy is Oromo and doing it for the Oromos. But of course, that is every fascist is doing like that. But that is not the main goal for them.
So, having listened to all of the good news, for me it's still the question, in the Western world we mostly hear about Tigray conflict, or the war is perceived as something going on in the north, like the government troops are fighting against the Tigray Liberation Front. And I'm still trying, so is this just it's a fake to cover what's going on like in with the Amharic people, so it's not the real conflict, or is it like the Amharic people have gotten between all the front lines? I still find it a bit confusing, so maybe we can, whoever of you now, we have just raise your hand, or maybe we can do say something.
Well, I can imagine, because the narration now and also the media coverage is about the war, which can be logical, but there are also other reasons why this has got a lot of attention. CPLF was the leader of the country for 27 years. They have had a good time with many different external bodies and government agencies. So it doesn't have to be exactly a certain government body or structure, but certain shallow side of the government of a certain country can be still using their power in order to have influence in the region. That can be why that has gotten a lot of attention. And of course, there is a real conflict ongoing. And as I told you, that is a power struggle, first and foremost. Because once you have control of the federal government, you have the absolute power and then dictate anything. So without controlling the central government's power and the bureaucracy and the finance structure and the military, you have nothing. So that's what TTL looks like, basically. So this is why conflict is there. But the war on Tigray, the war is in the Amhara region. Basically and physically and geographically, the war is now being battled in the Amhara region by TPLF. Actually, also the TPLF forces left the region and then were marching southwards. And then, so basically they are outside of the region with the law, with the human way, or whatever you call it, really lunatically gun-breaking, looting any health government or any public infrastructure purposefully. When we are count, that was the first round, now we have the third round of the war still ongoing on the Amhara land. While the region has more than 11 million internally displaced people from everywhere. So Amharas are being displaced from Benishangul, from Oromia, and displaced people are not also welcome in Addis, and so they have nowhere to go, and there is actually also no support whatsoever from the international community. As you see, 11.6 million population is more than the Tigray region population. Imagine that those are displaced people within the region, the residents of the region also. They are completely destroyed. Their livelihoods, their cities are shelled, and many psychological damage has happened. So the burden of this war is also really on the Amhara people and on the Amhara region. And unfortunately, the regional governments are absolute loyalties towards the federal government, and they are not really elected actually also by the people. So they have never been the voice of the people, to say so. Their loyalties to Abiy. So everything what has to happen and what has to improve in the Amhara region is not reported.
So maybe at this point, meaza, would you like to also comment on this, especially also why do you think we only, at least in the international media, we only see like as a Tigray Ethiopian government conflict, and we don't see all the other things going on in between?
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, as an outsider, it's a right question to be raised. You know what? The thing that Usoma is trying to explain is the beginning of all issues in Ethiopia, especially about the constitution. The constitution is the first thing. It is planned by the TPLF. There's no difference between TPLF and prosperity regarding about Arab, regarding about understanding the Ethiopia, understanding Ethiopia. They have the same looking of Amhara people. They understand that the Amharas are the first enemies. The Amharas are those who have to be considered as a second citizen. They have no any difference in this case. The difference that led them to the war is the issue of power. But I understand that the issue of power, the issue of controlling the safer government or the federal government with the main reason to have the war between the TPLF and the federal government. The thing happened here. Where is the geographical area that the war, or the battlefield, we call it, the battlefield is in Amhara regional state. Those that makes the people of Amhara the direct victim, the first victim, the people of Amhara. That makes sense. Where the play take place and where the war take places. And also, as TPLF said, and what I can agree and what I understand, the Tigray people are also the direct victim of this war. So what we can conclude from this is, of course, the TPLF is trying to explain that the Tigray people are just becoming siege. They are not getting the humanitarian services, so that leads them to the war. But what they are doing is just escalating the radius of the siege or the radius of the people who are in need of in this humanitarian service. They controlled the different places of the northern border, like Kobo, Bobi, and some other places, and then there's no communication around them, there's no any kind of humanitarian services. So the thing that we have to focus on here is about the international community. The international community understands this. The war is between the federal government and what kind of regional government. And the Amhara people are forgotten here. That's why we are asking here, neither the TPLF nor the Prosperity Party doesn't represent the Amhara people. Both of them, they have a serious agreement on fighting with Amhara people, displacing the Amhara people, cleansing the Amhara people. They don't have any difference. The difference is just regarding about their power. So we call upon this international community in order to be the voice for those voices. At least the Tigray people are used as a hostage of the ticket. They are using as a hostage. And then all of the time they speak about the humanitarian services, and the whole international community asks us to the federal government to give humanitarian services for the Tigray people, as if the Amhara people are under normal circumstances, under normal situation. But the thing is, the people in Wello, the people in Border, the people in Lalibela are not getting the humanitarian services. They have no light, they have no water services. Even still in Northern Wello, there is no any bank service. Even the displaced people from Wello, they're not allowed to interact with the capital city of Ethiopia because they are Amharics. Just for this reason.
At this point, I would like just to ask a question. I don't know who wants to answer that from what I saw, what you also gave me as background from the demonstrations that you recently did, that in Nuremberg here in Germany. You were talking about that now the Amhara people are also creating like a self-defense group called the Funnels. So something you could just briefly explain, Tama, would you like to explain
Well, of course, we do not want to fight each other, but the circumstances force it. And that is, Fanos, the Amara self-defense forces, we call them, Fanos in Amara, they are the one who said something, just fighting for the Amaras, consequently. And so, in view of the fact that from two ethno-fascists have been attacked, there should be a resistance within the victims. It is inevitable, as long as, because the Amharas must be killed, and that is what Fano is doing. And it is, of course, in the foreign media and so on, they have been telling something which is not at all the reality, by saying that Fano raped, Fano was in Tigray, and so on and so on. That this is, it is not, there is not any proof of that. But on the contrary, it has been proved by Amnesty International and so on and so on. In the Amhara region, when the TPLF, the ethno-fascist TPLF, invaded Amhara region, not only demolished most of the infrastructure, but thousands of women have been raped. And that is the difference. So the Fano, we expect that the Fano become stronger so that the Amhara could be defended.
Well, we have probably, of course, each side, all the sides, the different sides are accusing each other of human rights violations, as you just said, but you also made it clear that this is not them.
Well, the human rights violation written by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch was really very, very one-sided, not researched. And we couldn't find really a proof which you say, we could say, look, we have that and that. They were talking about the telephoning from someone from Kenya to Sudan, speaking with the fighters of TPLF, and the TPLF, and these fighters, of course, say that refugees, and that cannot be. I mean, it should be really. You have to have some proof, and that's also the proof, and that is the difference.
And to add on that, I mean, these refugees, so-called refugees in Sudan, are there. I mean, we have refugees from Tigray in the Amhara region in mass nowadays. We are receiving them. The Amhara region has received a lot of Tigrayans recently, while there is actually barely nothing for themselves. So these people, and sometimes this has some understandably some anger, because they say, yeah, they have to actually themselves have to resist the PLF and not flee, because they're the consequence that they are not fighting this ethno-fascist group is actually having a big consequence on the Amhara people and on the Tigrayans themselves. So they are fleeing the PLF from Tigray now and staying in Amhara region, and those Tigrayans in Sudan, I mean, if they are really refugees, they wouldn't be, why would they be afraid? Because they are still having Tigrayans having to stay in the Amhara region at this moment. And actually what happened at the beginning of the war is that 5 days after the war broke out, the Sunni group or some 20 youth from Tigray have actually massacred Amharas in Maekadra, and was brutally. So, and those youth, they are the refugees, most of them. Of course, women also are afraid if something like that happens. You feel also there might be consequences on you, so you also feel that there is a strong, still a recurrent attack from Sudan on the Amhara region from that side. So that those are not really refugees; they are actually mercenary killer groups who flee Ethiopia and have been interviewed by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and within that mean, we should go into detail, but there is a big question about the neutrality of these two groups when they reported this actually last April, I think.
So it's really very complex. I think we'd like to move to Alice. You have also, you said you wanted to go a bit more into detail with the situation, but it could be the situation in Alice, and I think you have prepared a short presentation for us.
Yes, but I mean, I can talk about it just to save some time, but just to relate like some factors, because like from outsider point of view, you know, the conflict in Ethiopia now we have like the war in Tigray. It's called the war in Tigray, where the war is basically happening in Amhara region. So the media, the Western media, first is about the war in Tigray and stuff like that. But they don't really go through the underlying factors like the Amara genocide, or the conflict is between different ethnic groups. Just to relate to you, Monica, to other maybe like people from Europe, we are talking about ethno-fascist regime, but if we take like the fascist part and any extreme right-wing political movement in Europe, by their very nature, they have to have an enemy. Like the Nazi, they have to have this imaginary enemy. It could be like the Jews, it could be like the Blacks, like the, you know, like the fascist movement in Italy. They have to create like an imaginary enemy just to advance their political motive. So even like in the current political European political environment, we see like developments in the right wing, in the extreme right wing part, and they have to creating imaginary enemy. You could see it in Europe, you know, from Europe history, and we could see it now, you know, from the extreme, from this recent developments of extreme right wing politicians. So with that same token, if you take the ruling Ethiopia now, they have one common enemy. They both are extreme groups, but they have one common enemy. That's like the Amara people. So they have this false historical narration, and they have formed this imaginary enemy, so that they could advance their political motive. So you could see like and you could relate easily how things are in Ethiopia politics. So in all this, like the last, I mean, the most worrying point is like the demarcation that is going on now between demarcation Addis Ababa and geographically, I mean Addis Ababa and the Oromia state. What they did is like the people of Addis Ababa, they don't have any political representation. It's just like the president of the Oromia region and the mayor of Addis Ababa, who is basically coming from the Oromia Prosperity Party, that decides on Addis Ababa. So the most important thing here to consider is like the citizens of Addis Ababa, they don't have any political representation. It is like the politicians from the Oromo Prosperity Party that decided this, a huge part of Addis belongs to like Oromia region, and this creates like the platform, the precedent at, because like if you see Wallaka and other parts of Ethiopia where the genocide has been committed, they have like this ground, some the other parts explain that if we see the genocide that has been going on in Rwanda, those people kill Amaras, force them to immigrate them. Their reason is that the land belongs to Oromos. So we don't belong here. This is our land. And we have the right to this land because we are Oromo. So that the same reasoning is now coming to this through this illegal demarcation. I don't know if I make myself clear.
Yeah. Thank you. So you don't want to share any more pictures with us, or?
It was just a presentation, and I've said like the
basically what you just said. Okay, thank you. In the meantime, we can see here some people are also participating in chat. I don't know. I'll ask again. Can they ask questions? Oh, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question from one of our viewers on YouTube. So the question is, where does this idea that Amharas have too much political power come from? So if anyone could answer that.
We would like to.
Where this comes from? I mean, there are different groups. I think where that came from, it could come from the outside. There were some books written by some, I think, fascist affiliated travelers, especially after Ethiopia defeated the first colonial invasion of Italy. At the Battle of Adwa, a lot of global media actually tried to portray also Menelik as a white guy, and then of course it was a big backlash for Italy, and then also part of, their allies back then for the scramble of Africa. Already they had roots in other parts of East Africa. Horn of Africa, so that was the expansion. So there were also a lot of battle between the British, the Italians, and others, French, and also the Belgians, but mainly the British, the French, and the Italians. So that defeat defined also something for Africa, and Menelik, being an Amhara emperor, he mobilized the entire nation to go to battle, and the battle was decided on one day. It was a one-day battle, and it was decisively won. And that probably, that was in the, so 127 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and that Italians say, the reason why we have lost this battle is that first Ethiopia is back then perceived as a Christian nation, even though Ethiopia is also the followers of all the Abrahamic religions. The Judaism, Christianity, and ancient Islam is all have people in Ethiopia and followers. But they say, one is that probably the Amharas and specific places even were mentioned later on for their defeat. And then they say the reason why we have lost was that because the Amharas and especially specific people from that certain place have been decisive to mobilize the people. So they were then actually earmarked also for and then these let's say liberation forces have been given food in many Western countries by scholars, and the rhetoric of we are marginalized and all this, that, and that has been actually the root cause for others to support this kind of liberation force elsewhere, and then believe in that, and then of course they have to have an enemy. And the rhetoric that Amharas, if you look at the history of Ethiopia, especially now, Tigray region, as a region, Tigray province, was mainly actually always governed by friends throughout history. The Oromos are the latecomers into the Ethiopian state, or they call it Ethiopian Empire. They have migrated after Ethiopia had a severe war in the early 16th century, the first half of the 16th century. So this historical, motion, we can go back and say, this is our land, or this is your land, or we are marginalized. Ethiopia was transitioning from very traditional church-focused or religion-focused scholar into modern. So we had Amharic, which was actually way before Menelik, a state language, has been used to educate the rest of Ethiopia, which There was
this is one thing that
they perceive that oh, that's imposed on us.
Yeah.
And that is, but what they are doing today doesn't, even then, even though that's true, which is not, but if then you shouldn't, or you are not, this is not the means of rectifying things, to be honest. And this is only the fastest way to expand and own a land which, I mean, the Oromia region, to be honest, it has never existed in history. There was no location that has been an Oromo ancestral land within Ethiopia, with the current Ethiopia. There were so many other groups that are now actually assimilated within the Oromos. So there is already now also small news, but you don't hear it, but many different ethnicities are now having problems with this Oromo expansionist mentality. Yeah.
I saw something.
You can answer that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very good question. What's the root cause? But the answer could be complex as it is, as the problem it is. But of course, the colonists and who want to dominate the whole of Africa as a neo-colonists, they also have interest. But Ethiopia is a unique geographical position. So there are a lot of geopolitical interests to destabilize Ethiopia. So this has been going on for the last 50 years, and the student movement, which was intended to overthrow an empire, quote unquote, an empire, had players had planned routes for what is going on today, and those leaders were the one who made the 1991 constitution. I mean, the 1991 overthrow of their government and the constitution. So the purpose of this groups, which is geopolitical interest in that area, is to destabilize, and if destabilize is not enough,